the alveoli and the alveolar wall. Now move to the very end of the airway. Here you find the alveoli. Alveoli are tiny air sacs. They look almost like little clusters of grapes at the ends of the bronchioles. They are small, but they are one of the most important parts of the respiratory system. Why? Because gas exchange happens here. Oxygen moves from the air inside the alveoli into the blood. Carbon dioxide moves from the blood into the alveoli. Then carbon dioxide leaves the body when you exhale. The body has hundreds of millions of alveoli, and together they create a massive surface area for gas exchange, around 70 square meters. That matters because the more surface area there is, the more efficiently oxygen and carbon dioxide can move. So picture millions of tiny air sacs, each surrounded by tiny blood vessels. Air on one side, blood on the other, a thin wall between them. That thin wall is what makes gas exchange possible. Now zoom in even closer. Look at the wall of one alveolus. It is extremely thin. Oxygen and carbon dioxide need to move quickly across this wall. If the wall were thick, gas exchange would be slower. The alveolar wall is mostly made of simple squamous epithelial cells. Simple means one layer. Squamous means flat. So imagine one thin, flat layer of cells. That thinness allows gases to diffuse efficiently. There are two important alveolar cell types to remember. Type 1, alveolar cells, and Type 2, alveolar cells. Type 1 alveolar cells are thin cells that form most of the alveolar surface. They are the main cells involved in gas exchange. Type 2 alveolar cells produce surfactant. Surfactant is a substance that helps keep the alveoli open. To picture why this matters, imagine a tiny wet balloon. If the inside surfaces stick together, the balloon can collapse. Alveoli are also tiny and moist, so they need help staying open. Surfactant reduces surface tension and helps prevent the alveoli from collapsing. So remember, Type 1 cells help with gas exchange. Type 2 cells make surfactant. Surfactant keeps alveoli from collapsing. The respiratory membrane and gas exchange. Now look at the alveolus and the blood vessel beside it. The alveolus is filled with air. The capillary beside it is filled with blood. Between them is a very thin barrier called the respiratory membrane. This is the exchange surface. It is where oxygen and carbon dioxide cross. Oxygen moves from the alveolus into the blood. Carbon dioxide moves from the blood into the alveolus. They move in opposite directions. Why do they move? Because gases move down pressure gradients. Oxygen is higher in the alveoli, so it moves into the blood. Carbon dioxide is higher in the blood, so it moves into the alveoli. Then you exhale, and carbon dioxide leaves the body. Picture this moment carefully. A tiny air sac, a tiny capillary, a thin membrane between them. Oxygen crosses into the blood. Carbon dioxide crosses into the air sac. This is the heart of the respiratory system. External and internal respiration plus breathing muscles. Now let's separate two terms that often confuse students. External respiration and internal respiration. External respiration happens in the lungs. It is the exchange of gases between the alveoli and the blood. Oxygen moves from the alveoli into the blood. Carbon dioxide moves from the blood into the alveoli. So external respiration is lung-to-blood exchange. Now picture the blood leaving the lungs. It carries oxygen throughout the body. When that oxygen-rich blood reaches the tissues, another exchange happens. Oxygen moves from the blood into the body's cells. Carbon dioxide moves from the cells into the blood. That is internal respiration. So remember, external respiration happens between alveoli and blood. Internal respiration happens between blood and body tissues. External is in the lungs. Internal is out in the tissues. Now let's think about how air actually moves in and out. The lungs do not pull air in by themselves. Air moves because pressure changes inside the chest. The main muscle for breathing is the diaphragm. Picture the diaphragm as a dome-shaped muscle under the lungs. When you inhale, the diaphragm contracts and moves downward. This makes the thoracic cavity larger. When the chest space gets larger, pressure inside the lungs decreases. Air flows in. Now exhale. The diaphragm relaxes and moves upward. The chest space becomes smaller. Pressure increases. Air flows out. The intercostal muscles also help. These are the muscles between the ribs. They help move the rib cage during breathing. So picture breathing as a change in space. Inhale, diaphragm moves down, chest expands, air enters. Exhale, diaphragm moves up, chest relaxes, air leaves. Protection, thermoregulation, and speech. Now return to the entrance of the respiratory system. Every breath brings in air from the outside world. But outside air can contain dust, pollen, smoke, microbes, and other particles. So the respiratory system has defenses. First, nasal hairs help filter larger particles. Then, mucus traps smaller particles. Picture mucus as a sticky layer lining the airway. Dust and debris get caught in it. Now picture tiny hair-like structures called cilia. Cilia line much of the respiratory tract. They move in coordinated waves, sweeping mucus and trapped particles upward. This helps prevent debris from reaching the deeper lungs. So remember this simple image: mucus traps, cilia sweep. The respiratory system also uses immune defenses. Lysozymes help break down trapped material. IgA antibodies help neutralize pathogens in the mucosal lining. Mast cells release chemicals that help trigger immune responses. Macrophages engulf small particles and pathogens. Macrophages are especially important in the lungs. Picture them as cleanup cells. They patrol the air spaces and help remove particles that should not be there. So the respiratory system is not just a pathway for air, it is also a defense system. It filters, it traps, it sweeps, it neutralizes, it removes. The respiratory system also helps with thermoregulation. Blood vessels in the respiratory passages can constrict or dilate. This helps the body conserve or release heat. The air you exhale is also warm and moist, so breathing is connected not only to gas exchange, but also to heat and moisture balance. The respiratory system also helps with speech. Air moves up from the lungs, passes through the larynx, and helps vibrate the vocal cords. That vibration helps create sound. Breathing supports speech. Airflow becomes voice. Slow full review plus outrow. Now let's walk through the whole picture again. Take one slow imaginary breath in. Air enters through the nose or mouth. If it enters through the nose, it passes into the nasal cavity, where it can be warmed, moistened, and filtered. Then it moves to the pharynx. From the pharynx, it enters the larynx. From the larynx, it moves down the trachea. The trachea splits into the primary bronchi. The bronchi enter the lungs and branch into smaller bronchi. Those branches become bronchioles. At the end of the bronchioles are the alveoli. Now picture the alveoli, tiny air sacs, clustered like grapes, surrounded by capillaries. Oxygen moves from the alveoli into the blood. Carbon dioxide moves from the blood into the alveoli. The thin barrier where this happens is the respiratory membrane. Type 1 alveolar cells help form the gas exchange surface. Type 2 alveolar cells make surfactant, which helps keep the alveoli open. Now zoom back out. The lungs sit in the thoracic cavity. The right lung has 3 lobes. The left lung has 2 lobes and leaves room for the heart. The parietal pleura lines the chest wall. The visceral pleura covers the lung surface. Between them is fluid that helps reduce friction during breathing. When you inhale, the diaphragm moves down. The thoracic cavity expands. Air flows in. When you exhale, the diaphragm moves up. The thoracic cavity becomes smaller. Air flows out. And all along the respiratory pathway, the body is protecting itself. Mucus traps particles. Cilia sweep them upward. IgA, lysozymes, mast cells, and macrophages help defend against pathogens. This is the respiratory system as one connected story. Air comes in, air travels down. Air reaches the alveoli. Gases exchange. The body receives oxygen. Carbon dioxide leaves. The respiratory system can feel difficult if you try to memorize every word separately. Pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli. But these words are not random. They are points along a path that air follows every time you breathe. So when you study this topic, do not start with the list. Start with the picture, the nose and mouth, the throat, the windpipe, the branching airways, the tiny alveoli, the capillaries wrapped around them, the oxygen moving into the blood, the carbon dioxide moving out. When that picture becomes clear, the terms become easier to remember. The respiratory system is not just about breathing. It is about movement, exchange, protection, temperature regulation, and voice. But the main story is simple. Air enters, air travels, gas exchange happens, oxygen reaches the blood, carbon dioxide leaves the body. Hold that picture in your mind. The path of air, the branching tree, the tiny air sacs, the thin membrane, the quiet exchange that keeps every cell alive. If this video helped you understand the respiratory system, please like and subscribe for more TEAS Science Review. And if you want to keep learning with clear, visual explanations, turn on notifications so you can follow along with the next lesson.